Introduction, Nigin. The contemporary period is a modern period of literature which started from around year 1950, after World War II, and still continues, so late 20th century to early 21st century. Unlike modernism, which is one of the last isms that we can talk about in general terms, the contemporary period is difficult to characterize since it reflects contemporary life and culture, which is still changing enormously. In addition to this, it is difficult to sum up this period, as there are several events in history and developments in the literature during this period.
The contemporary period comes with a lot of major events, which are important to talk about in order to understand why the literature developed the way it did. Today I will be explaining the history and change of the society which affected the literature in the contemporary period. In 1920s, radio started to become popular, and after the World War II, when the contemporary period starts, television started to become popular, and finally people from many different places with many different backgrounds could reach to news from all over the world. After the World War II, in 1945, there was a big immigration to USA. Many immigrants came to USA, and women who had to work during the war got back to their households. The most interesting thing is that 80% of those women actually wanted to keep working. This caused a big questioning of the norms of the society. What was actually the place of women in society? After working, women saw their own capacity and thought, why can't I work and earn money like the men in society? This created feminism. During 1950s, more refugees immigrated due to the Cold War. Also, illegal immigration started. Refugees weren't seen as victims anymore due to their existence in the society and also in high standard jobs. Americans started to be afraid that the minorities would take over the American identity. This idea of fear then developed to anger, hate, and racism. In 1963, Martin Luther King held his famous speech, I Have a Dream. I Have a Dream had a big influence, not only in USA, but also in the world, reminding everyone that it's love we should focus on and not hate. In 2004, 3 years after 9/11, Facebook was released and everyone with a computer could now share their opinions and ideas on social media. The development of technology opened easy doors for people to reach out to other people, and as we see in literature, this resulted in a lot of opinions as never seen before, due to the lack of communication. Confessional literature, as seen in Anne Sexton's poems, started showing up. In times before the contemporary period, people that didn't have money or power from family didn't have much opportunities in expressing their feelings and making them heard. As a result of technology, even people that had low status and minorities started to have voice and actually potential of making a change. Became diverse, and so became the literature. It is now more open than before, diverse. Throughout the contemporary period, you can see a clear development of the literary style. The idea of more liberal society was introduced, and talking about yourself in literature suddenly became acceptable. People developed from being conservative to being more open-minded, which allowed authors like Sexton, for example, to write about her personal approach to subjects like sex, love, and feminism. Technology and science developed massively, opening up doors for low-income citizens to also make a change and to have a potential. The breaking up of universalism, breaking the idea of living apart, resulted in a new, more free set of mind. During this period, we see a lot of questioning of the norms of the society in people's minds. Times before the contemporary period, what the readers would think was actually told by the author. But for example, when you read Sexton's poems, you can think of many different interpretations of the poem, and everything is actually not told by the Sexton, but you have a power.
Although it is difficult to delineate the contemporary period, there are some stylistic features and trends that stand out. Firstly, the literature is no longer innocent, but ironic. It does not believe that anything new can be created, but it can only cast old things in new forms. This is due to the fact that one of the Second World War's consequences was the lack of belief in God. Also, as time goes, it gets more and more difficult for most of the writers to come up with new ideas for pieces of literature, since there are only a certain amount of ideas and combinations of ideas which have all been used already. So it isn't a competition about coming up with new ideas anymore, since innovation is impossible. Also, confessional poetry is common during this period, and this is a style of poetry that emerged in the US during the 1950s. It has been described as poetry of the personal, which implies writing openly about personal things in life, focusing on extreme moments of individual experience and taboo matters such as mental illness, sexuality, and suicide. The poets use details of their personal lives as exemplary images of larger social problems. Many poems and other pieces of literature were also considered autobiographies in the sense that they could be connected to the personal lives of the writers and poets. Also, during this period, minorities have a voice. For example, African American people. Much of the contemporary period comes from Western authors. However, the term doesn't only include English or American literature, since this period can apply to written work from anywhere in the world. Globalization opened the door to include contemporary work written by many literary figures in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, mostly due to the decolonization in Africa and Asia, and also the Voting Rights Act in 1965, leading to less racism and segregation in society. Also, the movement of third wave feminism focused less on laws and the political process and more on individual identity. Identity is also another stylistic feature during this period. Back to feminism. The movement of third wave feminism is said to have arisen out of the realization that women are of many colors, ethnicities, nationalities, religions, and cultural backgrounds. So, the writers during this period celebrated sexuality, and they also wrote about stereotypes openly.